Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay, and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Governors Committee, Monday 24th of August 2020. For those that don't know who I am, I'm Ian Watkinson, Councillor Ian Watkinson. I'm chair of this committee. Councillor Colin Sharples is the vice chair, and we are expecting to be joined this evening by our external auditors from Grant Thornton and our officers. Please note this is an audio and video meeting. It's been recorded and the stream will also be live on YouTube. The web address for this is displayed on the agenda, apparently, and can be found also on the Council's website. Members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. Members are asked to keep their microphone, well, that's repeated. Members and officers present in the Shield Room are also asked to ensure that they keep their microphone switched off unless they are speaking, and to mute themselves afterwards in order to avoid any feedback. If that doesn't happen, I'll be amazed, but it always does when I'm chairing anyway. But anyway, reports will be presented by officers, after which I'll bring the report to committee. If any member of the committee wishes to speak on an item, you should unmute your microphone and say your name. Use the raise your hand feature or use the chat function in the top right hand corner to notify our moderator, that's Darren this evening, that you wish to speak. If the technology fails for any member on committee, then I will adjourn the meeting for several minutes to try and resolve the issue. If this isn't possible, we'll set a new date. Okay, so please can I ask for members on committee and officers who have dialed in this evening to confirm that they can see and hear what's going on. So we've got Councillor Clark.
Can see, can hear.
Thanks, Colin. We've got Councillor Mrs. Smith.
Yes, I can see and hear. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much. We've got Councillor Bretherton.
Yes, I can see and hear, Chair.
Thanks very much. Okay. And we've also got one of our external auditors, Simon Harman.
Yes, Chair, I can see and hear. So,
thanks very much. And do we have our Section 151 officer, James Thompson, who's on mine? He's not joined us yet. Okay. Okay, so I think that's everybody that's dialed in. Is that, yeah? Got that right? Okay, we've got Councillor Titherington as well. He's not a member of the committee, but I believe that he's dialed in. I could see him a minute ago, but I can't see him now. He's there, he is.
I'm here, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Mick. Okay, we can open the meeting and move on to item number 1. Apologies. No apologies, thanks very much. Declarations of interest. You'll have heard this already, as this is a hybrid meeting. If a member has a pecuniary interest, they are requested to leave the meeting completely rather than just mute the microphone. The member can rejoin the meeting following the completion of the item in question. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No? Excellent. Item number 3, minutes of the last meeting. I've got the minutes of the last meeting in front of me for approval. Do we have a seconder for those? Seconded by Councillor Sharples. Any queries on those minutes? Okay, can I sign those off? Okay, thanks very much. And moving swiftly on then to item number 4, our external auditor update. So that would be you, Simon.
right, thank you, Chair. So, just a brief update from the Grant Thornton team. Firstly, I just mentioned that we're continuing to progress the audits for 18-19 and for 19-20. There has been some delays. Personally, I've just returned from some extended sick leave, so a sickness absence, so that didn't help. And Mark Heap is also currently absent as well. So what we've done is we've put some new arrangements in place because of Mark's absence. and a new interim engagement lead is going to be looking after the South Ribble audit. So this is somebody called Mark Stocks. Now, Mark is somebody with about 30 years worth of audit experience in the public sector. He's a partner at Grant Thornton, and he's actually the head of the public sector assurance, the audit work within Grant Thornton. So I think Mark's involvement hopefully sort of demonstrates the priority that we're giving to try and complete our 18-19 work, and also obviously complete 19-20 as quickly as possible. The thing we're doing, as I said, I've just returned from sort of like extended absence. But we're working to produce sort of a detailed plan to ensure that we finish the work as quickly as possible. So that plan will take into consideration all the work that we've completed to date. The findings, for example, from the work that's been completed by the internal audit team, and also the latest developments from the audit world. One of the things that happens when you don't sign off a set of accounts per the normal timetable is we then have to take into consideration the things that have happened subsequently. So, for example, one big thing is obviously COVID and any implications that may have onto the accounts that we audited initially, or did some audit work initially last year. So, as I said, 18-19 is the real priority for us, but we are looking to progress 19-20 as well. And one of the options we're looking at maybe is to complete our work on the accounts, get to a point where we're considering the VFM conclusion, maybe park that to one side, just as though we can try and make sure that we've got the accounts work completely out of the way. One of the other things as well that we've done is we've reorganised ourselves a little bit within Grant Thornton, just to ensure that I have more time to spend on the audits. So it means that I have more time now to deal with some of the complex issues, and also to try and clear that 18-19 audit. Finally, on this particular area, Mark Stocks will be looking to attend the next governance committee. I think there's one which is scheduled currently for September, and Mark will be hoping to attend that particular one. I just thought I'd also mention just a couple of things, which a couple of updates generally. Recently, Grant Thornton's issued an in-depth insight into the impact of COVID-19 on financial reporting in local governments, in the local government sector. If James and the team have not received that particular report, I'll make sure that they get a copy of it within the next day or two. So there was that. Also, just to flag up that the NAO have issued a guide for audit and risk committees, which looks at financial reporting and management issues in relation to COVID. And again, I'll send some links through to for that particular report. So hopefully that summary was useful, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Simon. It was useful. Any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Chair. Simon, question for you. You talk about, obviously there's been delays in doing the audit, and you're working up a plan of the work that you've got left to do. So when do you think you'll be able to provide a forecast date of when you'll actually complete the audit, or at least get it into a draft form ready for initial reviews by the officers in the council? What month are we talking? What year are we talking?
In effect, we have completed a vast majority of the testing. The issues that sort of basically have caused the issues are probably the sort of issues that were outlined in the annual governance statement, which I think came to the committee, so I think it was in June time. And one of the things that we're having to work through is the impact of those issues in relation to the accounts. So the delay has been more or less looking at, has been more about looking at those issues and also the issues that were raised within the internal audit reports that were brought to the committee, I think in late June as well, or early July. And in effect, it is to ensure that there is no impact of any of the findings for the final accounts purposes. The delay's been minimal by my absence. I mean, basically, I think it's probably been just a couple of months where we would have probably started the work beginning of July, probably, rather than we'll be starting it sort of for within the next week or two. So, in effect, as I said, what we're trying to do is make sure that we can complete that testing as quickly as possible. When we did our work for the 18-19 audit, we did amend our materiality levels, so we did more testing back in 18-19 anyway, so I wouldn't expect there to be any substantial testing. What it is considering those, as I said, the findings that came from the internal audit reports, and consider the impact on the accounts. Just as one example, which I can give, one of the reports was in relation to the creditors system, and within that report by internal audit, it did actually say that external audit will need to consider the results of that report because of the potential material impact on the accounts. I'm not expecting it to be material, I should say, but there was issues within there which we do need to consider in relation to the financial statements.
So, sorry, going back to my question, do you have a month and a year forecast date of when you think you might be completing the auditing? Yes or no? If you haven't got one, then it's no, isn't it?
It's not at the moment, but we are putting those plans together, as I said, with Mark. I mean, as I said, I've only just been back in for a week, and Mark was only appointed to be engagement lead last Friday. So rather than rush into making plans and for me promising anything, I probably would rather say no to that. But one of the things which I want to emphasise is that the key element for us is that we don't rush the work. What we want to do is to make sure that we give the right opinion on the accounts, and that will take as long as it takes.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Simon, you mentioned about having a look at the internal audit reports that have been compiled by South Wales. There is one that has been compiled that has no assurance at all, which is the utilities one. And it has been drawn to my attention by a person that at the moment, the one that we've actually got ourselves contracted to is not going to give us value for money, as it is one of the highest rates that we could be paying, and also that the energy isn't as green as it should be. Will you be looking into that and giving us a report as to whether it is value for money or not? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. We won't be looking, I mean, specifically in detail to give an actual sort of opinion on that, but it is one of those issues that we're considering. There's a whole range of issues, and that particular one, the utilities one, has been raised with us. I've seen the report, and it's got no assurance, and is definitely going to be one of those ones which we will be looking at as part of our overall VFM conclusion work.
So at some point in time, I take it that we will actually have some comments made by you regarding this particular report.
Potentially, yes. I mean, the reason why I would hesitate a little bit is just because of when we're talking about sort of the materiality of issues, we'll just have to see where that comes into that sort of aspect of it. I would expect it is a piece of work which we are looking at, and we may include comments within our report on that particular issue if it is one of those issues which, when we've considered for our overall conclusion, it's one of those issues which we felt was important enough to mention within our reports. So I wouldn't. It's one of those ones where we do need to consider the whole basket of the issues that have been raised. And as I said, if we feel that is one which has been crucial to our final conclusion, it will be one which we would mention within our report.
Thanks very much for that. Any other questions? No? Well, thanks for that, Simon. And that brings that item to a close. It's just an update, so there's no vote required. Moving on to item number 5, the statement of accounts for the financial year 2019-20. Just to advise that there have been 2 supplementary agendas published for this item. The substantive report can be found in the first supplementary starting on page 7, and the second supplementary begins on page 97, contains the narrative report of the Council's Chief Financial Officer, and I'm sure you've seen and read those already. So if I can invite Tony Ferber to present this item, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think first just a quick update on progress with the document, because there were a few blanks in it as it went out. Now, all of those blanks have been filled in. Filling them in has not involved changing anything of substance. A couple of numbers have shuffled between a couple of boxes, and that's all that's in any way different. A small number of edits have been made to the existing notes in the document as it went out. A small number are, well, 1 or 2, as small a number as that, are in the process of being made. And once again, there is no change whatever to the substance of what's presented in them. The narrative report and the annual governance statement have both now been incorporated into the draft document. So we actually have, subject to just 1 or 2 final tweaks, a full document ready to go up onto the website on Friday, ready for the public inspection period to then begin on Monday in accordance with the revised statutory timetable. The covering report itself is very much as it has appeared in previous years. There is an outline there of the process that lies ahead of us. Of course, the thing that is different to last year, the things that are different to last year are the dates. We're here at the end of August rather than at the end of May, and Simon and his colleagues are working towards the end of November rather than the end of July. Other than that, really, there is no change in the substance of that process. Perhaps to just do, I mean, we began last year with just a quick tour of the statement. So if I could perhaps just repeat that tour for this year. And the tour begins this year at page 26 with the expenditure and funding analysis, exactly the place that we started last year. And down to the bottom. And there at the bottom, the answers to the 2 questions that everybody wants to know. Did we finish the year with more money than we started? And how much did we actually have in the general reserves as a result? Well, the answer is that there is £1.294 million more than at the start of the year, giving us total earmarked and general reserves of £20.813 million. So continuing that tour, to just cross-refer to page 110 in the second supplementary document, though I will have to stray onto page 111 because we have a little supplementary table to go with the figures from the outturn report. There were a small number of things that were processed after the outturn report was issued. So there, with those included, we have the 1.294 million. And then if we go to page 28, you'll see the movements in reserve statement, the 1.294 million and the 20.813 there again, and also appearing there immediately above, we see that 1.294 million having started life in the comprehensive income and expenditure statement as just £15,000. And then we have our statutory adjustments, which you'll recall as all these wonderful things that accountants insist on doing and then undoing, which then produce adjustments of to our 1.294. And then glancing back just to page 27, there is the comprehensive income and expenditure statement with the £15,000 on the bottom. And the other ones that slot into this picture are, first of all, on page 51, you'll find note 11, which takes the £20.8 million and breaks it down into the individual reserves. So all of that detail is there. And when it comes to the wonderful mysteries of the £1.279 million of accounting adjustments, there we're on page 49. And you'll see the £1.279 million there, broken down across the various types of adjustment, which we covered in the training last year. And again, they're listed, the main adjustments are listed in the PowerPoint slides that have been recirculated. There are a couple of slightly different things in the statement. Oh my goodness, I haven't referred to the balance sheet, have I? I'm sorry, the balance sheet. How could I forget the balance sheet, which does balance? Page 29. So we started with our 20.813 million. The MERS on page 28. We see that is also joined then by capital grants unapplied at 10.269 million. Total usable reserves, 31,082,000. That figure there at the foot of the balance sheet on page 29. A figure that is unusual in the balance sheet, we have there short-term borrowing of £10 million. Now, this isn't something we would usually expect to see on South Ribble's balance sheet, and I think with just a few weeks left in the year, we still weren't expecting to see it. If we refer to note 14, which is on page, the page number I didn't write down, page 54. Nope, sorry, note 18. Note 18 on page 60. You'll see in the table there the £10 million appears again, and the three paragraphs at the bottom, the middle of those paragraphs, the longest paragraph, is just describing the circumstances that gave rise to the temporary borrowing of £10 million. And then the other thing, and this is why I had note 14 in mind. So back to page 54. Another noticeable feature is comparing the non-domestic rates income for across the 2 years. We see there where it was 3.5 million in 2018-19, it's gone to a little over 5 million in 2019-20, and that, I'm sure, will come as a surprise to nobody. It is the working through of the change from 50% local retention to 75% local retention of income, with the council's share going up from 40% to 56%. And if you check the arithmetic there, you'll find actually it has gone up by just over 40%, which is really exactly where we would expect it to be, with the change in the share plus the increase in the multiplier and a slight increase in the base. Those are the main differences, and there is going to be a further training session will be run between now and when we get to the point where we're looking for the finalisation of the statement of accounts, when the audit is complete and the final statement is actually signed off. That's due at the end of November, though Simon and his colleagues will, of course, update us on the timetable for the completion of the audit. I'm happy to take any questions on the detail of the statement as it stands, or to take those anytime now anytime between now and when we reach the point where we're about to finalise the accounts. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Tony. That's excellent. And obviously there's lots of detail in there, and councillors can email in if they want more detailed questions. But if anybody's got any questions tonight, now's the time to ask. Any councillors on the committee? Wonderful. Any councillors not on the committee? We're on a roll. Well, Tony, thanks for the report. And as we've said, Councillor Mrs. Smith?
Yes, sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead. There, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The 11 of the new report. We've now got a surplus of 1.294 compared with a surplus of 1.4 million. And it says budgeted contribution to capital has been taken from this statement and put somewhere else, presumably into some reserves. Could you tell me where they are? Because I'm not quite sure where I could find that, which has been changed since we had the original statement to Cabinet.
Tony?
Yeah. Yes, it hasn't been taken out. It's actually been put in. That comes off the £1.4 million. What's happened with this is the transfer was actually made. The budgeted transfer was to be made from a reserve. So as the outturn report has been compiled, this has just slightly fallen between two stools because it wasn't a direct charge against the income for the year. It was always intended that it would be drawn out of a reserve. So it wasn't actually taken into account when arriving at the figure of 1.4 million. So this is showing that the £451,000 has now been taken out of that reserve.
Thank you very much for that. And the other one that I just would like to query, which is on page 117 at the top, the corporate risk register. It says monitoring of the corporate risk register has not been undertaken during 2019 and 20, and the register is confirmed as out of date in the annual governance statement. Could you tell me the reason for that, please?
Yes. Gary, can you help with this?
Yes. So I think, that's one of what I would regard as one of the potential corporate governance failings in the year, that sufficient attention wasn't paid to the corporate risk register during the year. People will understand that attention was drawn to other matters, and this is one of the things that hasn't been completed as it should have been in the year.
Okay, thanks for that. It is something that attention was drawn to during the AGS discussion, so, and it's acknowledged that it's a piece of work that we're on with. Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions from committee members? No, I've already asked about non-committee members. I don't think we've got anybody else. Oh, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were going to miss me out. My question relates to the point that Councillor Smith has just raised, because reading the narrative, it's a bit confusing, and anybody out there who are reading it, to my mind, would probably ask the question, because at the bottom of page 118, major risks, it does say the major risks to the council are covered in the corporate risk register, but it obviously conflicts with the point that Councillor Smith has raised, and I'm just wondering whether we should be a bit more transparent in the narrative to explain that, because to my mind and my thoughts reading it was there is this conflict, and I think perhaps it wants looking at. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. You're right. You could interpret that slightly differently. I think the point to make is that the risks were identified, but then weren't monitored. I think that's the key point that we're trying to make in this piece.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as it's, sorry, as long as it had a look at, just to make sure there isn't going to be a misinterpretation at that point. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Anything else? No. Okay, well, thanks very much for that. We're now at the end of that item, and the report, it's just for noting, so I'm not sure, do we need to vote on this at all? No, it's just, we should take a vote on this, okay?
Well, no.
There's a little bit of a debate about whether we need to take a vote on this.
Yeah. We would generally take a vote.
No, but the rules have changed there.
Oh, fine.
Yeah. So, sorry, just the rules around, I'm looking at Simon here, who'll probably be able to clarify this point, but the rules around adoption by the Governance Committee of the Accounts no longer exists. So we didn't actually have to bring this statement to the Governance Committee. We just thought it was a matter of good practice. So in my view, I don't think we need to vote on it.
That's correct,
I stand
Gary.
to be corrected, Simon.
No, that's correct, Gary. It is basically, sorry, there's an echo. So what there is on the account side now is that going back a few years, they did have to be approved by the committee prior to the public inspection period, etc. Now they only need to be sort of approved at the end of the process, so there's no need for it to be to go to a vote this evening.
Thanks for clarifying that, Simon, and that does indeed bring us to the end of the meeting. Great to see everybody. Enjoy the rest of the evening and the sunshine before storm, whatever it is, arrives tomorrow, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.